click this recording button. And with you two as my witness, I'm watching that time ago, and I do think we are recording, and I do think we are safe this time. So, without further ado, then welcome everyone. And if you're a bit confused by that intro, this has been done before. I'll explain in a quick bit, but I just want to introduce our two lovely folks here again today. Down there on my bottom left and down there with the very frantic Osu gameplay is Mr. Mooncake. How are you doing once again, good sir?
Well, I'm actually doing quite great. Just I can't complain. Just a little bit complain because which I'm sure you'll explain in a second.
I shall.
Previous,
I shall indeed, for those
incident.
confused right now. And then to the bottom right, the new guest, Mr. Sock. How are you doing this fine weekend?
I'm doing absolutely tired but happy as can be.
I'm happy
You
to
know how
hear
it
it.
is.
I'm happy
What
to
am I
hear
going to
it.
complain about?
No, then it's been a good weekend for both of you. No, so context very quickly for those of you confused by that intro. This podcast has been done. Literally, I did it yesterday, and I had in my recording Mooncake, Menashe and Adren, and Slogo Gaming. We had a freaking lovely discussion, like a long, lengthy one with a lot of input and stuff like that. And then when I checked over to my recordings tab, I found the file to be empty because I actually forgot to hit the lovely red recording button. That's why this time I made sure I can see it running on my side. And Mooncake has graciously offered he will do Osu gameplay in the background and still deliver some inputs. And Sock has also graciously offered that he will be my new person listening to this entire 2-hour discussion, because I thought, like, shame, I can't ask the other two to like listen to me talk the same stuff for 2 hours again. That would be that would be like a deja vu Groundhog Day moment. But yes, so now that we've laid out, what's gone on, we can actually move into the podcast, because you guys listening obviously haven't listened to it yet. So let's dive right into our topic today, judging by the title. It is DLCs and expansions, and we are going to talk about how they've been like the little seasoning on top of a great meal that is a game, the little dusting of sugar on a greatly baked cake when you're enjoying that game. It's just been there to make us enjoy our favorite game a little longer and play with our favorite characters a little more. That is basically what it is. But sometimes even it takes a more radical approach. Sometimes it's something like Far Cry Blood Dragon or Red Dead Undead Nightmare, where it's so out of left field that it feels also like an entirely fun and new experience that you can both enjoy. The role really of DLC and expansions in this light is to just take your favorite game and make it that much little more your favorite, however that may be. But now, I've had my fair share of really good experience with DLCs, really bad experience with DLCs. I do have fond memories of DLCs, and we can go around the room once again for maybe to hear from our guests. Do you have any fond memory of DLCs? It can be from your childhood days, a recent one, anything fond that you can recall.
So
Okay, yeah. I guess I'll go first. Well, yeah, I've got plenty actually. I do think I have to preface this by saying I never actually buy a game and then wait 2 years or 3 years or a year to buy the DLC. As I've said in previous podcasts, I'm a patient gamer. So I wait until the game is released in its final version and goes like, all right, so I'm going to pay $800 and get all the DLC with it. So my experience with DLC and expansions has always been pretty good. The only bad one that I can remember is back in Oblivion days, because I think that was the first and only one I've ever bought. It was like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy the DLC. And I got horse armor because I didn't realize what I was buying. I mean, I was like 15, 14 years old. So I got that, thought it was pretty useless because I also knew how to mod the game. So I just modded in more horse armor afterwards. But when it comes to good experiences, it would have to be Witcher 3, specifically Witcher 3 The Wild Hunt, because I got that, and with it came all the expansions and all the DLC. So Witcher, it's Heart of Stone, and what was the other one?
Blood and
Blood
Wine.
and Wine.
Yep.
Like Heart of Stone's story was just absolutely fantastic, and then of course, Blood and Wine is just another extra 20 to 40 hours of Witcher gameplay, so that was also fantastic. And then the other one that I really enjoyed was the DLC for Bioshock Infinite,
Ooh.
which I can't remember the name of that, but I've got the definitive edition of Bioshock Infinite on my Steam, so I've got all of the expansion for that. And going back down to Rapture with Elizabeth and everything was one hell of an experience.
Now, I do want to ask you, now that you've brought up Bioshock Infinite, because I think at the time of release especially, that game had a lot of controversy because of how it went out of Rapture, and I think, what's the city's name, into Columbus, or something like that. What was that Cloud City's name?
Yes.
But, no, do you...
I think it was Columbus, yeah.
Okay, then we'll go with Columbus. I might be wrong. I'm speaking under correction. But, like, now I want to hear from you.
Over Columbus.
Yeah. No, I want to hear from you now. Do you
Hold on,
prefer...
BNB, my internet is...
Do you prefer... No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Do you prefer Infinite over Bioshock 1 and 2, or is it vice versa for you? Or is it like all of them have good aspects?
Whoa, you see, that's a tough question to ask in a discussion about expansions, because for me, Bioshock 1 and 2 is just an entirely different game set from Bioshock Infinite.
Yeah, well...
Because I played Bioshock 1 and 2, and I played them through all the way, and then years later I played Infinite, and Infinite was just like, okay, this is very characteristically Bioshock, but it's not the Bioshock that I'm used to. It's not. It's a new game, so I love them both for different reasons.
I think they had their qualities. I think it's the thing is like it's probably one of those franchises that at some point got split down the middle, where there was an original direction of games, and then they moved away from the original direction and did something different. And then obviously that's a little bit divisive, as always with any franchise. You could think of the original Silent Hill 1, Silent Hill 2 had a very different direction to what Silent Hill 3, 4, Downpour, all of those had. And any other franchise you can really think of. Far Cry is also one of them. Far Cry 1 was vastly different because that was a different developer. But even Far Cry 2, which was the first stab at it by Ubisoft, that was extremely different in terms of tone and setting and stuff to the craziness that we know from 3, 4, 5, 6 onwards. Far Cry 2 is almost a separate entity at this point.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because Far Cry, I've got to admit, Far Cry 2 is the only one I've ever played, and I know for a fact that it was a lot more, I want to say, serious than Far Cry 3 or anything afterwards, because it was intense all the way through.
Yeah, no, it was, and I think it had a lot more almost survival aspects, because it had obviously the malaria threat. Your gun would jam. It had a realism
constant
of a gun
threat
jam.
of malaria killing you.
And other things, components about it. But it's, like I said, that was the general gist of it. But you do get that. But yeah, just a little tangent there. But like I said, this is also something that DLCs and expansions do. Sometimes they take a different direction also to the main game. Like I mentioned, Blood Dragon previously. Even Primal, which is technically a standalone game, that's technically also a very different direction, which might as well also have been an expansion on the game. In relation to that, but yes. Now, just to give a quick definition here for those of you confused about DLC and expansion, because I know it's terms used interchangeably. There is a little bit of a difference. I just want to explain that quickly. Or do you have a better explanation as far as how do you define DLCs or explanations or expansion? Sorry.
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
He's catching up.
Hold on. Okay. Rephrase from what do I define?
Difference between DLC and expansion.
Oh wow! For me, it's DLC can be anything. Is usually like add-ons to the game. It's like okay, so you've got your character, but this DLC puts you in different clothing or gives you a special gun. Or like gives you a training area or something like that. expansions has to be okay. We've added like 50 new quests, new leveling system, new areas to explore, new NPCs, new everything basically. Like I think it's Baldur's Gate 3 recently released an expansion that's like the epilogue of the epilogue, because like you before you finish the game and you would do a few things with the characters afterwards. But I think around December or something, they released a proper expansion epilogue. You go do like 5 or 6 more quests with each character.
Was that the
That's my
patch
definition.
6 they talked about, the patch 6 thing?
Patch 6 or something, yeah. Like you didn't have to buy it, but it's basically an expansion that they gave for free. It's similar to what CD Projekt Red usually does.
Yeah. I get you. No, so he really hit the nail on the head, and I think us and Mooncake and them also had this similar feeling to this. It's a simple thing that you can remember. All expansions are DLC, but not all DLCs are expansion. DLCs, as we mentioned, is downloadable content. The keyword is content. It can literally be anything.
Yes, perfect.
If you want to see a very practical example of this for anyone still confused, look at the Sims series. So the Sims series, you buy the base game of the Sims, but you can keep adding onto the game. So at some point, they release something they call stuff packs. These stuff packs are literal discs that you get a physical copy or a digital copy or whatever. The stuff pack, it will only really include items that you can now add into your build or buy mode. It'll have a specific theme or a specific setting or tone or whatever it may be, even a seasonal thing. But it's strictly almost just stuff you can put in build or buy mode. And then they release other Sims games that are technically expansions that'll be like Sims Pets, Sims Island Paradise, Sims University, you name it. That will be an expansion on the base game where basically they have a new town with some new buildings, new careers, and within these new buildings and careers, you get new gameplay. That is an expansion. That is when you expand upon the original idea of the game, of what your original game was. So that's that's like the later groundwork like that. That's how DLCs and expansions are separate. And now we can move into the history of both, because obviously expansions and DLCs had a very different upbringing when it comes to history in terms of how it started and how it's going right now. So when it comes to, for example, yeah.
Well, what I wanted to say is like we've got to consider that DLCs are much younger than expansions.
Yes, it is, which is strange because like expansions mean more, like it's more into your game, but they're older than DLCs because the name actually gives it away. Downloadable content. How do you download content? You needed the internet to come out.
I mean, back in the day, there was no DLC. It was like, I mean, we've talked about this before with Imagine. We used to specifically buy NAG magazines for the disc, specifically to get the patches that are on the disc because you couldn't get them any other way.
It's true, and demos, and get our hands on demos, early access, all that stuff. It had a lot of goodies for us, by the way. I'm assuming you were also a big time NAG Mag subscriber, Mr. Mooncake. If you're not too focused on your level right there.
I am actually focused. I won't even lie to you. Honestly, I couldn't really tell you, because I was kind of the kid who would jailbreak his consoles just to add his own extra spice to games, etc., etc.
Fair enough. You did your own DLC.
I mean, I remember a very big one with Modern Warfare 2. So I did. Okay, look, I was one of the guys who jailbroke their consoles at the time, and may or may not have had a mod menu, but I was always helping people rather than working against them. So normally when I would play, I wouldn't really use it for the aimbot and all of that. I just use it to give myself everything because I was a lazy kid. And kind of like if a friend or two asked me to like unlock everything for them, I'd just, like give them all their stuff. Or if I came across someone who was hacking, then I'd remove everything and they'd have to start from level 1 again. So
He was a Robin Hood, man.
that was kind of what I did as a kid. So I honestly really couldn't tell you.
The Robin Hood. No, that's your own creative way. But yeah, as we said, we have all come from our own walks of life. We're going to talk about modding a little bit later because I have a little cool little debate that I want to go about it. But Sock, I want to spare that debate for you later. We'll talk first now about the start in the history of both. And as Sock correctly pointed out, expansions are older. So we're going to start with the history of expansions first. Obviously, it is one of many ideas, again, borrowed from our friends at the tabletop gaming, card gaming, and stuff like that. You can just picture this. It's a D&D. It's D&D, right? They're a D&D board game. What are D&D board games famous for? They're famous for campaigns on a specific version or new adventures and stuff like that. So what happens is when they're on this new or on this current version of whatever D&D they're playing, at some point they're going to Wizards of the Coast will come along. They say, right, we're going to release a new adventure or a new campaign, and instantly that is in technicality an expansion because it's expanding upon the gameplay. Because in that new adventure, you're likely to encounter new foes. Your party members can do some cool new stuff. It's a new area with a lot of new quests, obviously, that comes along and all that sort of stuff. So that was the core term of an expansion in already a physical setting. And now for the digital setting, we started to see it as around the same time where digital games started to take inspiration from D&D, similar to whatever what is happening at the time. So we're talking about your text adventure games, your dungeon crawlers, party-based system games, stuff like that. Anything that like took inspiration from D&D also sometimes took the idea of an expansion to give it, because it meant the same in the digital space. It meant a new adventure, a new campaign, and a new thing for your players to play. And obviously, most of this was obviously in physical form because, as we mentioned, the internet was yet to birth all of this beautiful and unsettling stuff. But yeah, so I want to see how well you can guess, Mr. Sock. Unfortunately, Mr. Mooncake knows the answers to these already. But so how well do you? Where would you put it? Where would you think the first, in technicality, the first expansion was in video gaming?
Man, you're asking me a question now because my mind goes back to like, would Miss Pac-Man count as a freaking expansion?
No way did he.
Or like, Pong. I know that what they used to do to Pong.
Yeah.
You would get Pong that's normal, and then which Pong, by the way, is like the first video game, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And what they did is when they released later consoles, you could choose between normal Pong, or you could choose a Pong paddle that's a bit smaller to make the game more difficult. But I don't think that would count as an expansion. It would just be like a patch or something. So Miss Pac-Man or something, yeah, Miss Pac-Man or something like that, or like a Galaga or something.
So I want to point out, it's not Miss Pac-Man, but I cannot believe that you went out and guessed almost the exact same thing that Slow guessed last night when it came to Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man. That's quite funny to see that coincidence. It's not that, and the Pong thing, like I said, it's debatable because in your mind, what is an expansion if it expands upon the game and stuff like that? I'd say that's more obviously maybe just a cool feature to add. It's similar to what NES had with the Power Glove and stuff like that. It's more of a feature. But again, argue to your own sake. And on the Pong thing, yes, Pong is the first commercial video game, the true commercial video game, because it was commercialized and it sold really well in arcades and wherever it may have been in arcade stores and stuff like that. There are obviously examples of games before, but we're talking about, this is in the 60s where some nerds were sitting behind their university big IBM mainframe screen developing this small game, and they're not selling it to anyone. They're just showing like, hey, look what cool thing I made on this computer screen. Like, those weren't commercial. So I want to say I want to point out it's not Miss Pac-Man, but I cannot believe that you went out and guessed almost the exact same thing that Slow guessed last night when it came to Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man. that's that's quite funny to see that coincidence. It's not that, and the Pong thing, like I said, it's more of a feature. But again, argue to your own sake. And on the A good example of this would be Space War that came out in like 1970, 1971, which was before Pong, but it didn't sell. So Pong came along and did the first selling, and it really took this whole concept of 52 years ago, by the way, Pong. So give you an idea of that. If you want to feel like we've been around for a long time, just think of that. But yeah, so in terms of the first expansion, in my technicality that I found, there was this series in the 80s called the Dragon Slayer games. Obviously, you can tell from the title, and obviously you can tell from its nature.
Yeah, I remember them. Yeah,
They were D&D inspired games. I like how he's drawing Pog on the screen. I just caught my eye. No, so Dragon Slayer released this expansion called the game itself was called Xanadu, Xanadu Scenario or something, and the expansion they released was called Xanadu Scenario 2. Now Xanadu Scenario, as is with a lot of D&D and stuff, is choice based. Obviously, it goes all about your quest is influenced and your entire game and campaign is influenced by the choices you make along the way. So all that Xanadu Scenario 2 was it added more scenarios to the game. But again, if your game is based on scenarios and choices and adventures like that, now you've added more adventures and stuff to the game by adding more scenarios like that. So in technicality, that would have been the first true expansion of video games and stuff like that, which also obviously carried over because this was in the time where we went from arcade games to home console, home PC, and stuff like that. So that's why it also really nails itself down as an expansion, because obviously someone's gone home now and started gaming, and now they can game more on their game because now you've given an expansion for it. So yeah, but again, this was, as I said, the time period. This is the 80s, and as we mentioned, the time period is not ideal for really digital stuff and physical stuff.
It's right before the big Atari crash.
No, it was, but we were still all figuring this out. They were all still figuring this out, and one of the approaches they had at the time was something called episodic gaming. That was one of the first concepts, and I'm assuming it's probably an inspiration also from TV series and stuff. But they said, what if we take the base game and we broke it down more? That we in totality we release a base game, but what we want to do is instead of releasing the game and then the big game and then releasing small stuff, we're going to break the game down more and release small piece, then small piece, then small piece, then small piece, then small piece. So at one point you get less, but because we're releasing it more frequently, it almost feels episodic in terms of how they're telling a story and stuff like that. So it was an approach they tried, and they tried to see if that would take off really and stuff like that. And kind of, it wasn't favorable at the time, because I mean, like I said, now it's still a weird time for gaming. It was still a transformative, transitional time for gaming. But they tried. They tried in your typical genres at the time, which is again dungeon crawler, text adventure, RPG games, where they could just try stuff. So one of these examples would be Famicom Detective Club, which I'm assuming it's just cases and stuff you get from episodes and stuff like that. And obviously that was released on the Famicom. And another one was Shin Onagami. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Oganishima, sorry. Shin Oganishima is another one of these ones. Not a lot of this is seen. Like I said, the approach is kind of a weird one, because you'd rather, obviously, in modern terms, we think, oh no, rather just release the big base game, which everyone can enjoy and sink their teeth into, and then just release a expansion afterwards. But they were trying stuff. There are still ones that still do this kind of modernly. The most practical one I can think of modernly would be the Telltale series. In some of their series, they do release it episodically, and in a whole, it tells the whole story in terms of the character or whoever that may be. I think the Walking Dead series might be actually an example of an episodic release like that. I threw in here the Yakuza games. I don't think technically the Yakuza games qualify as this, but I feel like the way the Yakuza games, it's just so weird, because Yakuza has this really weird approach to stuff where it takes the exact same locations, it takes the exact same characters, but every time they tell a different story. but it takes place in the same timeline. So it's almost episodic, but not really.
Almost, it's more. I would call. Can we call it generational?
Yes, let's say generational, because I think Tekken does the same thing, where Tekken took off, like Tekken 1 and 2 were around each other, and then Tekken 3 is like a big leap from where Jin was a child to where Jin is now an adult, and then Tekken 3 to Tekken 8 is like only a few years apart. So it's almost also the same formula where it's generational, the same characters, the same long storyline, but it's happening throughout a period of time. So I think that's a good terminology, generational. So not exactly there, but kind of inspired, kind of not. But yeah, as you can imagine, episodic gaming, not really the most, not in its most ideal time period. Wrong place, wrong time, really, because of the internet and stuff like that. And you needed to. The thing with that is you need to know if you're going to release stuff online or release stuff that's like constantly and stuff like that. If you wanted to have an online component, you need to know obviously. Oh yes, my users all have good bandwidth, the necessary bandwidth that we need from these games, and we can entrust that all of our consumers will have some connection at home or whatever like that. And that was just not the case in these days. You'd have to kind of wait a long time for that really to implement that. So, for example, the Wing Commander series, which is I think a now defunct series, but it was also like a space-based series and stuff like that. But the Wing Commander series had this game called Secret Ops. They wanted to try and release this episodically over the internet. The entire plan was we're going to release the whole this thing episodically over the internet. It's going to be cool. You're going to be able to download it and you're going to be able to play it and everything. I don't think they even charged the fee for the episodes. But their problem was the episodes was 120 megabytes each, which in our days we're like 120 megabytes, man. That's like a photo that I take these days. But 120 megabytes of an episode each on a standard, more or less 50 kilobytes per second line.
That was a few days of downloading.
That was a few days of downloading, man, and I don't think you can ask
not
that
to mention you have to hope and pray.
Yeah,
nobody picks up the phone.
Yeah, and the download stops or fails, and you have to start over. So I think it's a nightmare kind of for your consumers, because I mean, they're trying to play your game, but the only way to access it is over the internet, which is not at its best state right now. And as you said, it's a very, very vulnerable and volatile state. So, didn't really take off. Secret Ops didn't really succeed in that thing, but they tried in PC world. Similar in console world, they tried something similar. The Atari 2600, which was also an 80s console, was one of the first ones to try this. They had this service called GameLine. Now, GameLine, basically, if you had the GameLine service on your Atari 2600, what they would do is they would install a modem and extra storage cartridge into your Atari console, and this would allow you to download basically content for your games and even new games that was only on the GameLine service. Now, they had some fees. They had a membership fee, obviously, for the GameLine service. You had to they charged you $1, I think, per download. Even if you complete the game, you have to download the game again, $1. So it's like I said, it was a bit of a very expensive service in the end, but it was there. It was cool to see in the 80s. The other problem, of course, is that this storage cartridge they installed for you was only 8 kilobytes.
Jeez.
And it was on a 1,200 bytes per second line for your lovely modem that they installed. Yeah, I can't ever see myself. Now, myself and MoonCake already discussed this. Luckily, we dodged the bullet a bit. We never truly experienced dial-up. I don't know if you have a horror story for us.
Oh, yes, I did. We had a computer in, I think, 2000 exactly. It was our first at-home computer.
Yeah.
And because we were in South Africa, after all, there was no ADSL or anything. It was dial-up. So I can tell you with quite a lot of certainty it was painful. Like, you would open a website and if that website had an image, it was over for you and everybody else in the house.
So they picked up the phone.
It's something that I like to something that I like to also, especially younger people, think of is back then we had a family computer.
Oh yeah.
There wasn't a computer in my bedroom. There wasn't a computer in my brother's bedroom and then one in my father's office space. There was a computer next to the dining table. And when we wanted to go onto the computer, we all sat around a computer like you would sit around a TV. And my dad would search something, and then my mom would search something, and I would ask for something to be searched. And when we went into chat rooms, it was all of us sitting together and chatting to people.
Now, see, this at least I can relate to. I didn't. I also had a family computer when I was really small. It was technically a work computer, but they designated it to be a family computer. Now we didn't necessarily gather around it what they would say is because we were like I said, I was fortunate enough to dodge the bullet of dial-up. I did have an ADSL line, a slow one, but an ADSL line, fortunately. But I do remember we were allocated internet time. They would say, this is after supper, they said, right, if you want to go search something, Armin, you can go now. You have 30 minutes to do internet time, whatever. Do your searching, do whatever you want, have your fun. And then once those 30 minutes are up, your sister can go, have her 30 minutes of internet time. And once you're both done, you go to bed and we'll say goodnight because it's a school night. That was my experience as well. Internet time.
That's still a little bit of fun there.
Yeah.
Good memories.
It's a good memory, and I think every time you tell that, like the more you grow older and the more like you tell it to younger people, the more I think it is gonna blow their mind. Like, internet time? You had to share the internet?
Yes, that also brought back a memory of mine. The first time I actually played games online was over a dial-up connection, believe it or not. And I would go to the Cartoon Network website. And they had games.
They had
Flash
games
that you could play.
They had the flash games.
Those were the games that I played.
They were good games.
So you would open up the game, and then you would minimize the browser, and then you'd leave. And about an hour later, you'd come back. It's like, okay, did it load? Did it not load? Did someone call? What happened?
No, it is like that. He's not wrong. I did the same as well. We discovered our games when we were in primary school in IT labs. They usually they let us play educational games on the laptop, but it was obviously to stimulate your educational stuff and all that, and to learn you about the computer and using it and stuff like that. But I remember, like, obviously you saw the other games. So what you would do is you just memorize the other games and then go home and try out those games and see if they were any good. And that's, for example, where I came across Papa's Pizzeria. Or, well, he had a whole range of stuff in the end, but Papa's Pizzeria or Freezeria was the first one. There was a soccer game. There was like a one-on-one version. There was just a lot, but that's how I discovered them as well. Flash games, which are now also gone, people. How are we going to tell our grandchildren about Flash games?
I mean, HTML5 does pretty good emulation for us now, so it's fine. We'll survive.
That's true as well. I mean, you can run literally base game Minecraft in the internet now. Can you believe that? Base game Minecraft can be run on the internet now.
Just before I went online, I saw someone hacked into one of those smart toothbrushes. We're so off topic now. Someone hacked into one of those smart toothbrushes and installed Doom onto it.
As always. As you would.
As always.
To be fair, these days they try to run Doom on any and everything.
I was gonna say.
I mean, they got Doom to run on a pregnancy test. That for me is like wild. That is very wild.
Well, if you watch
calculated how there's a scientist in, I think, Canada that made a hypothesis that you can use, like, I think 20 different crabs to make a logic system.
Yeah.
Right? It's like to go from, is it 0 or is it 1?
Yeah.
Right? And you if you have 20 crabs, you can go 0 or 1. So another guy went like, all right, so you need, I think it's 1.45 trillion crabs. He did the math. He wrote a paper for it to run Doom on crabs.
That's
nice. Nice. The revolution is coming.
I'd
the
love
crab
to
revolution.
See someone try and make that happen, though.
Honestly, why bother with so much effort?
sight
You
to
could
see.
just make the crabs play Tetris. Because, I mean, like, they're already in formation. You just make the crabs, like, fall in line like this and play Tetris.
But it's not Doom.
It's not Doom. I know. It's just that one thing. But yes, for those of you who now are spooked for life, there was a time in the dark ages that like dial-up connection existed and waiting for the internet existed. And it was such a time of the game line service because the game line service was slow, despite its novelty and its innovations and stuff. It was really slow. It was not practical at the time. Sega Genesis also attempted something similar to this called the Sega Channel. But again, you're talking about the same issues, negligible impact. But they were trying. And then at some point, they did make a breakthrough in consoles, again by Sega. The Dreamcast was the first real console with proper like the ability to download DLC. And yes, I mean downloadable content. So that was big. That was really big. And the reason, how they achieved it basically is the console came with its own network adapter, and then it used like these clever internal networking trickery that basically it could make its own network in of the thing, and then it would allow co-op multiplayer, which I mean this is for the Dreamcast I'm talking about in the 90s. It would do co-op multiplayer, and you can download DLCs for games like Crazy Taxi, Soul Calibur, Rayman, Sonic, all those stuff. And I mean this was unheard of at the time. This was really revolutionary. And I mean, not even the PlayStation, which was released at a similar time, had this. And it was kind of seen as the big brother or main competitor of the Sega Dreamcast. The Dreamcast failed in the end. But I thought to myself, like, if the internet at that point really took off, and the Dreamcast was the first, one to implement it, we could have been talking. Yeah?
The PlayStation 1 did have an adapter to go online.
Did it really?
Oh yes, but it was very pricey. Nobody actually bought it.
I see. Well, that's probably why. I think the Dreamcast came. This is now me speaking again on the correction, but like from what I've seen, is the Dreamcast came with it built in. It wasn't a.
Yeah. The Dreamcast had that basic functionality, I think, built in, and then you also got the like I think 6 or 7 different things that you could add onto the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
To make it go from a cartridge system to a CD system.
It's really a system in the end that was like, I think it was like, it's genuinely just overlooked at the time, It was just released at the wrong time, but I think had the internet taken off at that point, I think we'd be talking about maybe a Microsoft versus Sega. I don't know.
I've got to argue with you because I was there. I played on the Dreamcast. That was our first the first console in our entire family was a Dreamcast.
You didn't like it?
Cousin got it. It was fine. Like we played Toy Story on it, and I think we played a little bit of Sonic on it. But it sucked when it came to 3D graphics.
Okay. Well, like I said,
so. And that's where, like, the PlayStation was just like
excellent,
light years ahead of it.
No, well, like I said, this is me talking about like imagine. But I mean, if you're talking from the horse's mouth, here's the horse's mouth. He had a Dreamcast. I can't argue that. If he like, I'll take that in as face value. But actually, yeah, let's see. My first console was I was only a generation later. My first console was the PlayStation 2. So before that was family computer, and then PlayStation 2. When I think mom and dad decided we need to be kept busy or whatever. So we went to PlayStation 2. What was your first console, MoonCake? By the way, I don't think I ever asked you.
My first console, it was the PS1. Actually, now that I think about it. My first console that I actually got for myself, well, obviously got for me, but that I had to myself was the PlayStation 1. Okay. But I've had numerous PS2s. They all had like unfortunate events. The first one, I don't know what happened. I think it short-circuited or something. That was gone. Second one, I broke it. That was gone. PlayStation 2. My brother pulled the cord over, and then like the thing that reads the CDs broke, so that was useless.
Oh, no.
Nice.
Fourth one, someone stole it, which I was actually very upset about. I felt so insulted because I had such a massive stack of games and such, right?
Yeah.
And out of they took everything, including the PlayStation, whatever, because the place was broken into, and they left my 3 favorite games, which was Harry Potter. I felt so offended because I was like, "What are you trying to tell me about my 3 favorite games?"
They think you're mid, bro.
Like, these 3 games I know aren't worth it.
Yeah.
They think you're mid, bro. No, I had the fortune. So I got that PS2, and that PS2, I like the controllers did have its days. Like, I mean, I was a kid. I was not very careful with them. The controllers did have better days in the end. I had one of those. Like, at that point we didn't have the triggers at the back, like what consoles have. These R1 and R2 were essentially like the same level, because stuff like that. And I think what happened was I hit the controller on the ground like this, and R2 got lodged inside at one point. So my controllers did unfortunately get a little bit of a beating, which I'm very sad about. But when it comes to the PlayStation 2, I protected that thing because I knew, like, if that thing goes, I've got nothing. So I protected that thing like my life depended on it. And that console never died. But to this day, I kind of feel like I kind of regret it, but I gave it away to someone who really wanted a PlayStation 2, because I got the 360, and I was like, I have this PS2 and I'll probably still cherish it, but this person like really didn't have anything, so I was like, I'll give them the PS2. And you kind of feel like I
Same,
kind of feel like
same.
about it, but I'm like, oh, but they would really wanted one so much.
But I always say, like, the Xbox or Microsoft's idea of having pass through their console on the Xbox One came a generation too late. Because if the Xbox 360 had passed through like that, I would have kept my PlayStation 2 as well. Because once I got my 360, I also I stopped using the PlayStation 2. Because I remember even one of the last things we played on our PlayStation 2 so regularly that we broke the controller was Guitar Hero 3. And then the first thing we bought when I got the 360 was a Guitar Hero 3.
Nah,
With
yeah.
the game and everything. So we had no more use for the PlayStation 2 and we gave it away. And then I think 2 years later, we walked into Top CD, Polonada, and there was just an entire wall of PlayStation 2 games. Like the gaming section used to be small, and then like over 2 weekends, they just decided, no, we're going to go big in games. So like they had like 2 shelves for Xbox 360, a shelf for PlayStation 3, and then like an entire wall, just PlayStation 2 games. And you got games there for like $50, $100, $200, and we were like, oh, fuff. We were so mad at them, and we were so mad at ourselves.
No, I know.
Like the cat.
I know. It's like
cat.
That cat does not want to be held. No, I went through the same thing, because I remember going through that whole cycle of, oh, well, I won't, and then stuff like that. And then I think the realization really set in about like prices for stuff. Once I started comparing PS2 game prices to 360 game prices, I was like, oh no, oh no, this thing is getting expensive now.
Yeah, but that also reminded me of like the first game my brother and I ever bought that had an expansion set on it. Was Empire Earth 3. And my brother bought like the definitive edition. So you got like 4 DVD discs in there. It's like the first one is just the base game, and then each one after that was like 2 or 3 new ages that you got onto it.
Yeah.
That was only PC. Yes. When did the expansions come to consoles?
So we'll get to that in a second, but they were, like I said, DLCs for consoles worked. Expansions, there were some. I'll get to them in a second, but
Yes.
PC did take obviously the reins here.
It was much easier.
It was much easier in the day. So, like I said, that's that for the console. And now we move back to the PC side to talk exactly about this now, expansions, because they were going strong already with DLCs in the 90s. Like I said, now you're talking about genres that took off in the 90s. We're talking about platformers, still dungeon crawlers, but also shooters and stuff like that. And all these games started to develop new quick ways to get DLCs. I mean, just release a new map, just release a new level, release some new weapons, some new skins or whatever, or something like that. to kind of keep the game going for now and stuff like, because they could upload it at the time. And technically, this is a little spicy debate we had in last night, because we were talking about the nature of DLCs and stuff. Because obviously, when we talk about Doom, one of the first shooters, the reason why, and you were joking about the pregnancy test and all that stuff and so on, but the reason why it's so obviously so good and so alive still today is because of how well coded it is, and it allowed the introduction of mods and modability and stuff like that in the form of the WAD files. And at that point, obviously, Doom could be modded and things could be uploaded like levels and stuff like that. Now, the argument for DLC is technically, according to its definition, DLC is proprietary to the publisher, which means that's like only they can release DLC. But my semi-argument is that if your game is built to be modded, would that count then as DLC? Because technically it is keeping the game alive, and it is content that you can download even if it's not proprietary. So Doom was maybe a precursor.
No.
You don't rate it?
No. I don't gel with that definition at all. Mods
Like I said,
and DLCs are vastly different things.
Yeah, no, I said, like, technically, in technicality, it's proprietary. I feel like in some games you can maybe have an exception to the rule, like one game that's, like we talked about, that's literally a mod, and it thrives off of mod, is Gary's mod, Gmod. That game's entire content base is just stuff added to the game by people who created it and added to the game to keep it alive and stuff like that. Also by the team themselves, obviously.
You're talking about Gary's mod, but Gary's mod is pretty modern. I'm surprised you're not talking about Counter-Strike.
Counter-Strike I'm going to get to, because there's even one before that, but Counter-Strike and this whole Steam thing is also something we're going to get to in a second. But before all this, one of the first ones that decided to elevate new gameplay was Cave Dog with Total Annihilation in 1997. Now, obviously, what they released was also more or less DLC, but they built upon that, because what they would say is, right, we're going to have a regular release of these DLCs. We're going to release units specifically. And the thing with units is because they started releasing all these units and levels and maps and stuff at the same time, which allowed new gameplay, because now people are sitting down and saying, oh, we've got new units and stuff. Now we can play as new factions. We can have difference in our strategies going forward. We can evolve the game going forward and stuff like that. So they are really kind of the precursory ones to what's coming with the expansions and stuff. But there were two really, really, really big games in the 90s for PC that definitively took expansions forward into the modern way we see expansions. The way we see it, where it's narrative based, because obviously this is the turning point where gaming started to become a very narrative experience, and a game driven by a narrative, and a game that's focused more on that, and it has a strong influx of that. So
never before in my life have I fought so hard when Morrowind released.
Thinking time.
Morrowind, and I know Fallout 1 and 2 was in the 90s.
Yes.
But Morrowind, Daggerfall, Arena was 90, wasn't Arena like 91, 92?
I'm not too sure when Daggerfall released. I do know Morrowind was like, when was Morrowind? Was Morrowind not 2000? Something like that.
Yes, no, see, 2000 feels a bit too old for Morrowind.
I don't know.
Maybe no. Yes, that because Morrowind was the first proper creation engine game.
But these are two really big games from the 90s, and I mean super big. Guess the biggest game you can from the 90s, and you'll probably be correct for the first proper expansion.
The biggest game I remember from the 90s is like freaking Unreal Tournament, because that's all we played. But it's not that big.
It's not that big.
But all we played was freaking Unreal Tournament and Quake.
Well, I mean, you can thank both of those games for the internet you have today, because they were like the ones that introduced proper
they were like
stuff.
key
So
to getting that. But I can't remember now. You're gonna have to tell me.
So the first game, because this was 96, so one of the first games to do the proper expansion, Blizzard did it with World of Warcraft 2. So World of Warcraft 2 was Tides of Darkness. That came out, and then
Yes.
a while after they released the expansion Beyond the Dark Portal, which I believe was the continuation of the second game's story. And it also introduced more multiplayer maps and stuff like that. So that was a proper expansion because it's like a continuation of a story. Now you get to enjoy the game a little bit more, enjoy characters a little bit more and stuff like that. But I will give a tiny bit more credit to the second one. Because now, as I said, this is also a genre that really benefited from expansion DLCs. MMOs, obviously, we can tell from its name and stuff. Massive multiplayer online, and you want to have all that content online so you can keep people online and playing your game and keeping your servers up and all that stuff. Obviously, that's...
You're not going to say RuneScape, are you?
No, RuneScape was not 90s. I don't think. It's way bigger than RuneScape.
Yes. Okay. No. Tell me again, because I can't think of an MMO from the 90s.
No, it's not. Sorry. No. I confused you there. No, only the first one is an MMO. The one I'm going to give more credit for.
No. Hold on. What do you mean? Like World of Warcraft 2 wasn't an MMO. Warcraft 2 was not an MMO.
Was it not an MMO?
No, it was not an MMO. Warcraft 1, 2, and 3 were just like normal games. They were not online at all.
I thought they were all MMOs.
No, we had to mod. Sorry for the word. We had to mod the shit out of them to get them online. You could play local area network like Dota originally on Warcraft 3. I'm giving you a lesson here. I know I shouldn't like this.
You should because you were there, man. You should.
Because Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne, right? That's where Dota started.
Yeah.
That was only local area network.
Okay.
You couldn't play that online at all.
Well, I do apologize because I was Mandela affected because I could have sworn all the Warcrafts were MMOs, so that's on me.
No. That's actually one of the reasons World of Warcraft was so controversial. Because World of Warcraft retells and tells the stories that are told in Warcraft 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
So that's why you actually get people that are still going like, we want a Warcraft 4. Because that's like a definitive story that's being told.
In the arcane world of Warcraft.
Yeah, in the world of Warcraft.
I see. Okay, that makes now more sense. So thank you for that clarification. I will give a little bit more credit then to Blizzard for this because obviously then they released the proper expansion. The second one, which is also a different version of the expansion, was Half-Life in 1998.
Half-Life.
They released a expansion called Opposing Force in 1999. So if you're not familiar with the story of Half-Life, I'll give a quick little breakdown. Basically, you play as Gordon Freeman. You wake up in the Black Mesa facility in a hospital. I think you get basically briefed by the doctor saying that there's been an alien invasion or an outbreak, and you're trying to basically save, well, what's left. So Opposing Force.
I think it's about time you go play Half-Life, but I won't say any more.
Gosh darn it! Don't. This is.
Because you're going to get some hate in your comments from what you just said. But go play Half-Life. I won't say more.
All right. Well, I will say Opposing Force was the same story, but it was through the eyes of a U.S. Marine called Adrian Newman or something. And basically they came to check out this whole alien invasion. But the reason why it's called Opposing Force is because his mission was to eliminate Gordon Freeman at the time. So they also did a new concept where it was you tell the same story but from a different perspective, and in that way they did an expansion like that. So that was Opposing Force as well, and obviously at this point, like you said with Counter-Strike, that was also an expansion technically of Half-Life, as was Blue Shift and all that stuff in terms of how they released. I had this my brother had this box set, and I remember it so well because it had all the cool little colors. So I had Half-Life, the red Half-Life cover, then I had the green Opposing Force cover, then I had the blue Team Fortress Classic cover, and then the yellow Counter-Strike cover. But I
know exactly what box that is. It's called the orange box.
I could never play blue and yellow because I didn't have internet, so I could only play red and green. So that was a fun time.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun back then. Yeah,
that was a fun thing to talk about. But yes, Sock also correctly pointed out that Counter-Strike also had its fair share of stuff when it comes to expansions and stuff. And
Counter-Strike is an expansion, and yes. So yeah, the only one that I know isn't is Portal.
Yes, well, Portal is its own thing, and then obviously Portal 2 came along and was its own thing, and we never saw Portal
Yes.
3 because
So
Valve is allergic to the
Team
number 3.
Fortress. To play Team Fortress and Counter Strike, right? You would
Yeah.
have to have the Half-Life launcher because it runs on the same physics and everything. Because it's
Yes.
expansions. It was an expansion originally, and it wasn't until Counter Strike Source
Mm.
that Counter Strike was like a different thing entirely.
Mm.
Which let me tell you, it made things so much difficult when you had to when somebody was just getting into the gaming scene. Yes, now I'm gonna reveal my age again. Maybe like 2003, 2004. There was this constant issue, right? Because every LAN you would go to, I would have like one or two new people that this is like their first LAN. This is the first time they're gaming on these types of games that aren't just single player. And you would all right, you've got to go to this computer. Okay, this is how you do that. Okay. And then they copy over Counter Strike and they copy over Warcraft 3. And then the first thing they always do when they open Counter Strike is they open the wrong launcher.
Whap, whap.
So they go into Half-Life and they're just sitting there. It's like, I can't see you guys. Where are you? It's like, no. You've got to change launcher. Change launcher.
But now that's what now that you've talked about Counter Strike Source, now I need to once again ask the lovely horse from his mouth right here. I know this is now where also controversy sets in because at this point Valve, as you mentioned, had this issue of they want to have all their stuff contained within the updates they want to have contained in one place, all their games and stuff they want to have contained in one place, and at some point around here they did introduce Steam, obviously, which was supposed to be the thing that binds all together, which was very controversial at the time, obviously, for what it did.
Yeah.
So, as far as I understood, what they tried to do to get more people to play Steam, because obviously Steam they basically forced people to get the Steam client because they would host their updates from there. So they said, we're going to put all of our updates on there, and you have to go to Steam now to play it, and people got upset and stuff like that. And if I'm not mistaken, to try and incentivize more people to play or to get Steam and play it through there, they released Counter Strike 1.6, I think, only through Steam or only online, and that was
Okay, so Counter Strike 1.6 was the original one that ran on the Half-Life engine.
Okay.
It was version 1.6, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, Counter Strike Source released.
Yes.
That was the first Counter Strike that was on its own. And every time you went to a LAN, there would be someone that had ADSL at their house, and they just downloaded the latest patch because that's one of the things NAG never did. They never released patches for freaking Counter Strike. I don't know why. We'll have to ask Imagine why, but they never did that. So you would then have to copy that, and then Counter Strike Global Offensive.
The big one, yeah. GO was
the big one
going forward, yeah.
Yes, that was the one that was on Steam.
Yes, because obviously.
No, wait, not Global Offensive. I think it was just Counter Strike. It was just called Counter Strike.
I think it was just CS. CS:GO was the big one, launching the whole genre forward. But CS itself, I think, was the first one on Steam.
That was it's just the plain Counter Strike. Yeah, not so. I keep getting confused with Go because I kind of like Counter Strike Go. I like the name Counter Strike Go.
It sounds like I've been corrupted about Pokemon Go, so now every time I think of CS:GO, it's like I imagine you walking around your phone looking for a bomb. Where's the bomb? I'm trying to scan a bomb here, man.
Yeah, so Counter Strike, proper Counter Strike, the one that you had to buy on Steam. That was the first one. They released a separate version because Counter Strike Source they couldn't control because they just lost all control in it. There was no way for them to retroactively enable that type of control because Counter Strike Source didn't need any internet to run.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Steam eventually also came birthed from all of this confusion and stuff like that, and then obviously we had our own can of worms that Steam released with stuff like what Steam and the other clients came around. We had DRM and other stuff like that, which is a whole different discussion with lovely DRM. I know people have their feelings about that, but yeah, it was also obviously, like I said, Steam was a good client for them to be able to put DLCs on and stuff like that, and then move forward from there. So there is a lot of contribution that came from, humble little Half-Life, doing all these expansions, and then it just exploded all that way forward. But then, yeah, that's basically how the modern expansion DLC came along, and it inspired a totally new direction for video game developers and people going forward. They would basically then have multiple ways of how they can do a DLC expansion. They can continue the story, they can have something radically different, they can introduce a new character to the fray, they can tell this exact same story from a different perspective, all that lovely stuff. And it also started to fit more niches. I know you talked about Guitar Hero and stuff like just now, and one of the cool things about DLCs and stuff, especially on Xbox Live service at the time did this really well. But like the cool thing about Guitar Hero and Rock Band and stuff like this is you had the base playlist that came with the game, but at some point they'd release more playlists and stuff you can go download underneath the DLCs, which would mean basically adding more songs to play, which was cool because more songs to play means more game. So it started to fit more niches like that. All the pieces started to fit together, like how DLC and expansion can help out and stuff like that. On the other hand, it did also present a new, unique challenge for developers when they approach the idea of how to continue development on a game. Let's say they have a good game. Now they've said, like, right, this is definitely a good game. We have more ideas for it going forward. And they sit around, they start discussing their ideas and stuff, and they're putting all the creative work together. But now a big decision has to come along. Does these creative ideas and stuff we have fit still the theme of the original game? Does it still fit our mechanics? Does it make sense for our character? Does it make sense story-wise? All that stuff. Or is this now too many creative stuff all at once? Do we need to say this is not going to be a DLC expansion? Is this going to be entirely a sequel? And you have to have a debate of back and forth about that with creative, in terms of your scope, in terms of what you're adding to the game and stuff like that. You have to be delicate about it now, because obviously if you don't do this correctly, things can go very wrong, which we'll have a little bit of a discussion about just in a second. But if you had to think about it, do you know of any examples where a game's maybe had a development start as a DLC expansion and go into a sequel, or vice versa? Can you think of any?
Yes, there are a few games that I know, but I can't remember their names. That just we're working on an expansion. We're hearing about an expansion, then a year later, because the expansion got too big, we made a new game. But something that I do remember quite vividly know and remember is that once expansion started being a thing, the quality of games actually increased. It's one of those things that I feel a lot of modern gamers won't always, especially when we're looking at things that like Cyberpunk 2077 and then the expansion Liberty City. There's a lot of complaints about how bad Liberty City is and how bad the endings and everything is, but for me I remember when games like the Tomb Raider 1, 2, 3, and then I think it's Dark Angel and then Underworld.
Anniversary
all of
as well.
those games. Yeah, Anniversary, which is the 5th one, I think, yeah. And then Underworld is the 6th one. Or was that anyway, I can't remember the exact, but all of those Tomb Raider games, all those first Lara Croft games released within 12 months of each other. It got so bad that I watched a documentary recently. That's why it's on my mind. Because I remember playing Tomb Raider 2 and liking it. And then when we played the Dark Angel, we were like, what is this? What the hell is happening here? Everything is handling like crap. Nothing is fun. The story doesn't make sense. She died, but she didn't die. Here we are. We're playing through a diary. We're not playing through a diary. There's a main character, but there's not a man. What the hell is happening here? And what expansions basically means is that when a game gets big, you've got a core team of developers and creatives behind it, obviously, right? That's driving this game. And what happens with expansions 90% of the time, I'm not saying 100 because it doesn't. Most of the time, it's a few of the lead developers that goes I want to make more of this game, but the core team that made the game isn't there anymore. They've moved on to the next project and they're making something greater. But the younger devs that the company has hired, as it is expanded, start working on the expansion with a few core developers from that were there from the get-go to guide them.
Yes.
Which is why I often see that expansions have improved games overall. Because now, instead of having what happened with the Tomb Raider games, where the first game was made by a core team, that same core team immediately started developing Tomb Raider 2. And then when Tomb Raider 3 came on, a lot of that core team said, we're tired. We've worked for 24 months straight almost. Like, they were doing 7 days, 14-hour days, right?
Yeah.
So some of them left. So the company hired more people and told them to work on Tomb Raider 3. And before they could actually get good at it, the company hired another core team, another different development team to work on Tomb Raider 4. And then the team that finished Tomb Raider 3 started working on Tomb Raider 5. And again, some of them quit. Yeah, so that's where it's like the quality dropped significantly with those types of developments. And then you get expansions where it's just some of them are genuinely better than the base game. Like, I like Witcher 3. Like, this is the game that I've played the most through with its expansion as well. Like, often I'll play a game, I'll finish the game, and then I'll do the expansion, and then I'll forget about it. But Witcher 3 is the only one that I'm like, I've played through Witcher 3 Wild Hunt like 3 or 4 times now. I've finished it, and then when I go back into Blood and Wine, it's like, yeah, it's still this. It's not the same world anymore. This is just basically a whole different game.
Yeah. No,
after the actual game, and it feels different. The environment is different. The gameplay feels almost different. The story is almost more captivating to me than Ciri, because I like Ciri, like, oh, she's cool, but a battle between immortal vampires,
man, come on.
Like, who's not gonna like that, right?
Yeah.
And then you get also Hearts of Stone. That story like came out of left field and was just like, oh shit, I did not expect that. Like,
the random merchant in the beginning of the game just being like OP as all hell.
OP as all hell. And then I remember that was the first time in my life that I did save scumming at the end of the game, because that's one of the things that I never do is I never save scum. Like, if I make a decision and it's a bad decision, I just barrel through it and continue on with the story. Hearts of Stone was the first time ever I was like, hold on. I know this DLC has like 3 different endings. Yeah. I want to see all of them, and I want to choose the one that I like the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's more or less what I think about expansions and like the scope of what they do to games, and like how often they become another different game.
It is true what you say. It is really true. I think the core element of an expansion of DLC should increase your love for the game. It should make you appreciate the game more, and it should just be a continuation of your investment in a game. And myself and MoonCake also discussed this at length last night when we were talking about a game, a live service game, not in a great place right now anymore, but it had at some point it had a really good system of pulling you in hook, line, and sinker with its expansions, and stuff. And that was Destiny 2. That had like a fantastic main campaign when it came out, and it had great expansions. And I think MoonCake could also attest that it caused us severe amount of hours wasted on that damn game.
I mean, if we could start considering like live service games and MMOs, right? I like those cheap for free RPG, JRPG, MMORPG games that you get. That's like, it's like, who plays this? Like, I'm the guy that plays it. Like, I've got thousands of hours in them. Like,
yeah.
And I remember in 2009, 2010, Fiesta Online 2. No, just Fiesta Online, not number 2. Fiesta Online, when that released, I spent months on that game. Literally months. And we had almost no internet back then to speak of. Like, we had those dongles with 2 gigs. I would wait until 12 o'clock at night to get the midnight night owl cab just to play that game and update and everything. And like my friends and I would get together after school to download the latest patches from each other.
Yeah.
Right. And there's this one game that I played during college called Aura Kingdom. And that has some of the most significant expansions that I've ever experienced, because when I started playing it, it was the level cap was 60. That's what you got. That's where the story ended as well, because the story wasn't very deep, but it kind of was entertaining enough to like actually play it. And then I got to level 60. I got to the cap. And it was like, okay, this is as far as I'm going to go. I didn't do PvP. And then as soon as I think about a month after that, I got an email. It's like, listen, we're releasing our first expansion.
Oh no.
We're increasing the level cap and we're increasing the story. And I can remember I was one of those I was one of the only players that started playing the game, and I did all the quests. Not just to get the XP, but I wanted the story as well. And that's kind of what we have to talk, what you were mentioning with Destiny 2 as well. It's like, because that's what kept happening for the next 3 or 4 years. And then at some point it stopped. They're still increasing the level cap, but there's no more quests for story or anything to it. It's
I know. That's when it got sad for me. That's what got sad for me, because it was like I'd log in and I know the new expansion dropped, and the only thing I could think of was, I'm minimum power now. Like, I'm minimum power. I'm gonna be useless now, and I have to go and grind. I didn't even feel, because I stopped buying the expansion, so I mean, like, I don't get part of the story, but now I'm still minimum power, because people who do get the expansion get to go higher with their power. So I sat there and I was like, can't do anything. So it was kind of a rock and a hard place, and at some point I just said, no, I don't want to go down this road anymore. And I call it being sober from Destiny. I've been like 2 years sober now, and I'm not going back. I'm never going back. I'm never going back to that dark place.
That was my exact experience with Guild Wars 2 as well. It's like, obviously, Guild Wars 2 was also another one that I got into, and I bought it right as they released their second expansion. So I got like a whole bunch of extra stuff. Like, they gave me a free level 60 character, which in hindsight, because I was hard-headed, I was like, I don't want to just start the game and have a level 60 character. That means nothing to me. I've never played Guild Wars in my life at that point. So I started from level 1, and I quickly realized how bad of a choice that was. But I got in a bit late, because I got my main character to level 60, and then I got my second character that immediately went to level 60. I have no idea what his story is or how to control him. And then I think 2 months later, they released their third expansion, I think. Yeah, second or third expansion. I can't quite remember. It's the one before the second dragon shows up, anyway, in storyline. And I was just like, oh, I think I spent like a month grinding in this game, doing all the quests, because freaking hell, Guild Wars has a lot of stupid quests in it. I know Guild Wars people are going to hate me for that. And then they released an expansion. It was just like, yeah, that kind of ruins the fun for me now.
Because now it's not there.
Yeah, no, and like there's players on the servers that Guild Wars is their entire life.
Chronically Online, you mean? Yeah, I know the type.
Yeah.
Destiny had those as well. But yeah, so in terms of as we deviated away from the topic there, sometimes, like I said, DLCs and expansions also do deviate more and become sequels. It's natural. Like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can become a bad thing. We will discuss that in a second, but it's not necessarily a bad thing just to make a executive decision to say, like, this should be a sequel now, or a standalone game now, because it's too grand in scope and stuff like that. So for
you mentioned that, but that just sorry.
No.
I just got reminded immediately. Like Subnautica, right?
Yes.
And then you get Subnautica Below Zero. Subnautica Below Zero. A lot of people think that's the second game, but it's not. That's actually an expansion.
Yes, it was. That's a very good example of one. when
it's just as good as the base game. That thing.
when the base game came out, I remember there was an announcement. There's an actual announcement somewhere that was announced that the expansion, the Arctic, they called it at the time the Arctic expansion for Subnautica was coming out in due time, and then it was almost like radio silence, and then Subnautica Below Zero at some point dropped, and that's like when people realized,
they launched the trailer, and everybody was like, "Do you need the first game for this?" Like, no, we decided you don't.
No, you don't need it. Don't worry about it. No, that is a very good example actually of one. Others include, and I have a small tidbit of a story for each one. For most of them, but Halo 3 ODST was one. I don't know the Halo games too well, so I can't really comment on the story of them. But this was around the time where Bungie was still in charge of Halo and stuff like that. And the story goes that this was supposed to be obviously a DLC expansion for Halo 3. And at that time they said no, they won't charge people because it's an expansion. They want people to be able to, that bought Halo 3 to be able to play it. And then somewhere along the line, obviously, something happened. They said, this is too big. We're going to have to make it a standalone game. And obviously, now it's a standalone game and they charged money for it. I don't think they charged full price, but they still charged money for it. And then when the reviews came around, it still had good reviews. I mean, it had like 70s, 75s, 80s maybe. But I think there was an on-record comment by one of the Bungie execs that said, if we didn't tell people it was supposed to be a free DLC, we would have gotten better reviews. So I thought that was just a funny hindsight comment to think about. That's one of them. Assassin's Creed Mirage was also supposed to be an expansion, which is kind of a weird one to think about. It was supposed to be an expansion for Valhalla. Where Ivor was supposed to travel to the Middle East for whatever reason and then come across and have his own adventure in the Middle East and stuff. That's why their timelines are so close together in terms of the time period. But obviously, I'm assuming what happened.
I would say that's like an example of something that they tried that then tanked, because I think I saw 2 streamers doing that thing, and then I've not seen anything from Assassin's Creed Mirage after.
It's been a bit of a one. I haven't heard anything since, but I know my assumption why it became a standalone game is because obviously this thing was marketed as being going back to Assassin's Creed 1. It's stripped back. It's more simplistic parkour. It's going to be more about stealth. It's going to be a smaller city, stuff like that. And when you put all that together and you think about Valhalla, he was not an assassin. Let's be honest. Ivor is not an assassin by any means. It's an RPG-based game, similar to what Origins and Odyssey was, and it's an open world, and you have stuff like raids and all that stuff. It doesn't really fit the same theme, so it started to clash, I'm thinking, and like they said, oh, we can't just let Ivor go to the Middle East, it would make no sense. So then obviously the main character became Basim, Basim also being the equivalent of the modern-day person, after Desmond and Aya, not Aya, the other one. The unimportant ones. Desmond's the only one that matters, people. Desmond's the real OG.
Yeah, Desmond's literally the only one that's important.
So I'm gonna just jump like back in here. Look, I haven't played a single Assassin's Creed game since they killed my man Desmond. Okay, when they killed him, I was devastated. I was done with Assassin's Creed games. It could not be good anymore. So yeah.
Do you know what's the irony, right? I don't think there was any actual reason for killing Desmond, but then when you play through Assassin's Creed 4 and Unity, they are actually so much more fun because they've killed Desmond.
The modern day. You know, that's the irony.
Yeah, they limit the time that you spend in the modern day.
That was the
absolutely. They try to get it over with as fast as possible.
No, I know. He's talking about the irony. I like Desmond 2 as well, but at the same time, I can't lie. I was one of those people that every time I'm playing Assassin's Creed 2 and I see myself exiting Amazon, I'm like, no, not again. I don't want to play as a stupid teenager. But like I felt the same way after Desmond died in 3. I was like, oh no, Desmond. And then 4 came out, right? And I heard like this was when 4 came out, and I heard a little birdie tell me, no, they harvested Desmond's organs or something, and like they put his cousin in the animals. I was like, what the hell? I was like, I'm not playing that.
No, nothing like
story. That was, and then I played Black, and I was like, oh, this is actually good. It's fine.
That's wow! I didn't even know about that what
No,
sort
but
of
I think that was a
cannibalism
wild
did this
rumor,
game
dude.
develop
I don't
into?
think that was
Oh no,
remotely
no,
true.
no, don't worry, MoonCake. They didn't do that.
They
I
didn't
promise
do
you they
that.
did not
I
do
think
that.
Oh,
someone was
jeez, I
just
hope
really
not.
bitter about Desmond, but I remember that rumor going around. I was like, what the hell? I was so
The most
shocked.
prominent rumor I remember was like, no, Desmond's not actually dead.
But he
I was
is
like, no, I think he's pretty
technically
much
not.
dead.
He's now
No, he's
well,
pretty much dead.
he's the reader, man. Come on, he's now living inside of the Animus. No. So Mirage is one of them. Mirage, as you see, like completely different styles clashing, and they obviously made an executive decision. Not that Ubisoft minded, because I mean, no, we have to release a new Assassin's Creed game. Oh no, I wonder what could go wrong. But
Everything went wrong.
yeah, well, everything goes wrong with Ubisoft these days. One of the most obvious ones when you think about it, Tears of the Kingdom was supposed to be an expansion, and I think obviously also what happened there is they realized how much of a step up Tears of the Kingdom is towards Breath of the Wild in terms of like how in some mechanics like the crafting and stuff like that. And think they kind of also made a decision to say, right, we don't want to really make it just an expansion stuff. It should be its own thing. Because I mean, we talked about this also last night. There's like this master mode or something, or like one of the more difficult challenges in Breath of the Wild is you go through this whole challenge. You have to defeat this one boss, and I think once you defeat him, you get this cool item which is like a dirt bike that you can travel around the Breath of the Wild or Hyrule with. This dirt bike, and it's supposed to be like this big item because I mean you worked a lot of time for it, defeating this really difficult boss with its boss phases and stuff, and you get this dirt bike to travel around Hyrule. And then within Tears of the Kingdom, probably within the first 5 or 10 minutes, you can craft the exact same dirt bike from the crafting mechanics. You go, and then you can you can just have your fun there. So
I can understand if you finish the one and suddenly expansion adds that. That would be a big problem. But
yeah,
as far as I know as well, Tears of the Kingdom's story is just so wildly insane that it wouldn't work as an expansion either.
I think as well. I think the scope of the story is just too grand for expansion. Expansion should still be a contained story. It can't be this big grand thing similar to what your game was, because then obviously you're just making a sequel in a way. The last example, I think this is my funniest one. I laughed a lot. I laughed quite a lot when I read about this one. Hollow Knight Silk Song, which is hopefully an upcoming game. Hollow Knight Silk Song was supposed to also be an expansion for the original Hollow Knight, and at some point they deviated into a different game. And the reasoning is you're playing as a different character now, which has now different mechanics, different gameplay and stuff like that, and they obviously had a story implemented and stuff. But do you know the true reason why this never was an expansion for Hollow Knight originally?
No.
So Team Cherry, the people who made them, went on record and said they didn't know how to code DLCs or expansions. So they were so confused by it apparently, and trying to implement the same features and stuff into the base game and making it into a type of expansion stuff. Instead, they just scrapped it and said, screw it, let's make a new game. It's fine. Let's go through the whole process.
I mean, I can honestly believe that. Having done some coding, like I can see how that would be a problem if you didn't know how already.
It's funny, but now talking about the this feature that I mentioned, playing as a new character, I always talked about it on Facebook before. So I need Mr. MoonCake to share the story on the podcast about Nier Automata.
Oh yes,
You do
yeah,
need
one
to.
of my favorite games. Okay, I actually need to stop playing to speak, otherwise my thought process is right out the window.
I'm just moving
Yeah,
from
no,
pizza, but
clicking
continue
circles.
talking.
Yeah, clicking circles and trying to talk at the same time apparently does not go very well together. But long story short, Nier Automata is honestly, I rate that game. I would rate it a solid 9 out of 10. I would say 9.5 out of 10, just for me personally, because I enjoyed the story and the mechanics just that much. And the nice thing about Nier Automata is that most players will actually not finish the game in the sense where they play it and they finished it. Let's say you play your world or whatever, it ends on a cliffhanger. They're like, wow, that's it, and rated a bad game or whatever the case was. Luckily, we have the internet, so most people already knew about this shortly after release. But anyway, and I remember finishing the game. It ended on a cliffhanger, which made absolutely no sense. And closed the game, whatever the case was. Next day, went back into the game. I was like, oh yeah, what if I try and explore, see maybe if I can explore the world or whatever, because the save is still there. Does it stop me from the boss fight, or does it just like, I can run around, do whatever, finish any whatever side quests I had. And it actually started over again, which was quite a shock because I was like, whoa, okay, what's going on here? Why am I starting from scratch? When it clearly says that my save it's perfectly fine, only to find out that, oh, now you're playing from somebody else's perspective, which in its own way is pretty much like it's expanding on the story now. So you run around as 2B in the beginning, which is the character's name, the chick, and then afterwards the guy who's been helping you all the time, like that NPC that just follows you and is always useless. 9S was there. And then second time around you play as 9S. Play. It ends off around. It doesn't really end off at the same point. Now you continue a little bit further, but then what most people don't find out is that there's a third playthrough again. So if you play through it again, you can play through it for the third time around, I believe. If I remember correctly, I can't remember if that's how it worked. But once you finish whatever you finish, you can go through it a third time, and now you get a perspective from someone who is, I wouldn't say not involved entirely, but it's so disconnected that that person wasn't there for about half of the story. And then now you're playing with that person to finally finish off the story to show exactly how it ends and in what way, the true ending of it, if you were good enough to get the true ending. I haven't really. It was a lot of playthroughs. I lost my will to play through the whole thing. I still rated a great game though. I did get through like the third time playing through it, and with the final stuff, I just never really finished it for some reason. It's just kind of been sitting, but great game, great mechanics, and it's a nice way to have like a hidden, expandable pack. Because I mean, if you can imagine, you're sitting playing this game, oh, you think it's finished, it's horrible or whatever, but you enjoy the fighting mechanics. You leave, do something for like a month, say, oh yeah, maybe I should do another playthrough, and find out, oh, you've got basically a brand new game to play again. Assuming you haven't watched anything on Nier Automata, because I didn't watch any playthroughs or anything. So when I came back to it the following day or whatever, then I was quite surprised that the game continues.
Mooncake.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that watched a lot of stuff about Nier Automata before I ever played it, and I only played it for like 50 minutes, and then I decided this is too much work.
Yeah.
It has 26 endings, right?
Yeah, I know. It has a lot. You can,
Yeah.
like, I remember one of the endings
is like.
I remember the one ending that just caught me off guard is if you eat a fish, you die.
Yeah.
And that's an
Nice.
ending. That is literally an ending.
Are you allergic to fish or something? What's the story behind the fish?
So, oh yeah, no, the fish has oil in
They're
it. And,
automatons, yeah. You can't eat.
well, they can eat. They just can't eat anything with oil in it specifically. It's the oil that like completely just messes them up. They're machines, but apparently can't handle oil.
One of the things that always shocked me about one of the endings that I heard about is like, that commands satellites.
Oh yeah.
There's one ending where you blow all of them up.
I actually didn't know that.
Nice.
Yeah, I was like, when I heard that, I was just like, there's just like, it's kind of canon, but it's not. I'm just like, how can that be kind of canon, but it's not? You like literally kill almost everybody.
We'll find out in Nier Automata
genuinely
2,
didn't mean to
okay?
do
They'll
that.
choose one of the 26 endings.
No, the new one is out.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, the 2.6 blah 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 blah. I
Yeah,
couldn't
Nier-
really care.
Near.
I think it's
near
isn't it
something.
like pi? No, it's not
Near-
pi. Pi starts with 3.
It's near
something.
replicant. There we go.
Yeah, Neo Replicant 2. Version 2. something 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 something.
Yeah, version 1. It's on my computer right now.
Long
1.22474. Oh, I don't even know. What that
number.
is.
A long number.
Long number.
A long number indeed.
Yes.
No, so yes, there's, like I said, this is the incredible story of that, and like I was gonna say at the end, for the future of DLCs, I think it'll be cool if we saw more stuff like that, like Nier Automata did. Catching you a little bit off guard with your expansion and stuff like that. Catching you maybe a little, like asking the gamer to pay a little bit more attention. Making sure. I think that would be.
When it comes to DLC, right? Like I think I mentioned this right at the start that I usually wait a while to buy the games.
Yes.
So I own Tomb Raider 2012, Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, and then Shadow of the Tomb Raider, right? I never bought any of them the year of release. I bought them like 2 years after they released. So I bought the definitive Game of the Year complete editions. And when it comes to DLCs, I like how DLC were done with them, because once you start a game, you get different outfits and stuff like that, but none of it changes the game. That's one of those things that like I'm very old school about. If the DLC changes the game, I get a little bit riled up. You know, like I like the DLC and I like the secret stuff. Like I'll go achievement hunting for them and I'll wear weird outfits and hats and stuff. But if it's like, oh, there's this DLC for $10, it gives you a gun that kills everyone.
You mean I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually when I start like going like, yeah, this DLC is pretty much pointless. It defeats the entire game.
No, I mean that's what
And-
paywalling was all about, or not. Sorry, not paywalling, pay to win. Whole concept
Pay to
behind
win, yeah, on live service
monetizing
games,
that
yeah.
as well, and loot boxes. I mean, in general, I know loot boxes are cosmetic nowadays, but still, that's cruel. It's the way they monetize
Oh no,
DLC
I see
as
even
well.
loot boxes a DLC.
Yeah. But no, so that's like we talked about the good ways expansions can go into sequels, but as we all know, there is obviously a bad side of trying to make an expansion into a sequel. We'll pick the low hanging fruit because I know it's going to trigger Mooncake, but Modern Warfare 3 was supposed to be an expansion for last year's Modern Warfare 2, and then some bright guy at Activision said, hey man, why don't we just make a Modern Warfare 3, man? Why not? Why, come on, we already have Modern Warfare 1 and 2. Why not just make Modern Warfare 3 the game? Well, we know how that went. We really know how that 6-hour campaign, Warzone mission campaign went. Or the zombies, that's also just Warzone with zombies went. Must be a great expansion sequel, eh? But, yeah, strange decisions. I felt the same about Warzone when Warzone 2 came out. I really did not understand the nature behind Warzone 2 in terms of how
those all started so innocently, and they just, as Activision slowly got corrupted from the inside.
Something that went horribly wrong, yeah.
Like you could see the change with Call of Duty specifically. Like it was bad with Blizzard stuff, but Call of Duty, like I think it was around after what game? It was Black Ops 3 was the last Call of Duty that I actually paid attention to.
Yeah, Infinite Warfare, but Infinite Warfare came at a time where they released back-to-back like futuristic games. So they had Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, and then people kind of got. I mean, you've had 2 years of it now. And then they wanted to do Infinite Warfare for Infinity Ward's turn because it was Sledgehammer, Treyarch, and now Infinity Ward, and they wanted to do Infinite Warfare, and people were like, "No, we want to know what plays." And then at the same year, Battlefield 1 released, which is not only an old school game, but it was World War 1, which is a war that wasn't.
I'm gonna bring up a very controversial opinion now.
You better not.
But Infinite Warfare honestly got way too much hate than it was worth.
Oh no, that I agree with. That one I agree with. I was
Realistically,
going to trash on Battlefield, but you better not trash on Battlefield 1.
No, I'm a Call of Duty baby. So, but look, I've played pretty much every single Call of Duty other than the new ones, just because they have fallen off so badly. Tactical sprint. But anyway, pretty much, yeah. No, Infinite Warfare, hands down, probably one of the best campaigns that I've played to date. It was a lot of fun. It was very challenging. They took a different take at making the game, how hard it is, where, I mean, you had to monitor yourself because depending on where you got hit with a bullet, your guy's arm would either be injured, now his shooting is weird, or if you don't have a helmet on, you're a one-shot headshot, things like that. Like, it was very different, and it was it brought a new gameplay, because now I'm talking other than story-wise, enjoyed it a lot. It was different. I mean, I still remember the robot. I don't know if you guys have seen memes of it or something, but Ethan, who dies in space with your main character. So you both float off in space, and then then the main character dies and Ethan survives because Ethan is a robot. But anyway, seriously great campaign. Multiplayer is a bit more controversial because I feel like the multiplayer. I can't remember. It was either the most balanced multiplayer that they have made at the time, or the most unbalanced. But I feel like I'm leaning towards the most balanced. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've played the Infinite Warfare. But I just remember everything any gun that you wanted to use essentially could kill, and every gun that you used felt like you were able to, use it and get a good streak with it, depending on how good you were at the game. But yeah, no, it's and then zombies as well. I feel like that game just got way too much hate than it was worth. Just because people didn't want a futuristic game, that game got really thrown under the bus. Then they released which one?
World
I
War
can't remember
II
which came after.
after.
Yeah, and then World War II started getting trashed, and I enjoyed World War II. It was funny as hell because of some of the bugs in there. I mean, I remember the big thing. I like sniping. I'm one of the quick scopers that everyone gets annoyed at. But there was a thing where your scope would glitch out and it would be like pitch black. And because it was pitch black, you can't really see what you're aiming at. So you just run around quick scoping anyway with a black screen, and people would get so pissed off because you've got no crosshair or any. You literally can't see anything, but you're still killing them.
You're blind killing, basically.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, pretty much. You
Wasn't it
scoping in and
World at
hoping for the
War?
best.
World at
It's
War was
Infinite?
2008, so that was like
Yeah,
the
World at
the
War is
Treyarch
an
one.
old one.
Okay, yeah, no, but like I remember Infinite War
Yeah.
coming and announcements and everything, and then right after they made their announcement, Battlefield was basically like, you guys have been asking for a World War One game again.
Yeah.
So we made it, and that's that I think drove a lot of the hate towards Infinite War.
Because Battle
Yeah.
they kind of at that point assumed,
But
oh, DICE is
it got
listening.
an unreasonable amount of just hate
So-
for that game.
I have to say this, right, because as like a fucking old guy, sorry
Yeah.
for the word. I started playing both games when they first released. Like literally, I played Call of Duty when it was Call of Duty, and I played Battlefield when it was just Battlefield. Before the new Battlefield, it's just Battlefield. And they were both World War One games, and then they were World War Two games, and then they slowly progressed until modern stuff. And then Battlefield kind of got stuck at like pre-modern, just after Cold War stuff. And Call of Duty kept going, kept getting more modern, and they increased their release schedule. And everybody was just like, "This is very annoying to do because it's not just." That I think Modern Warfare was the first one that brought in levels for your multiplayer character that you have to like unlock.
Oh
And
yeah.
because none of us had a legit copy of it, every time we went to a LAN and we got the new version, we had to start from level 1 and like level up again. So that was very annoying already with Call of Duty. And then I remember just before Infinite War, everybody was going like, you know what, can't you guys like bring out something simple again, like World War II and like the campaign?
Yeah.
That was the big thing that
Oh,
people
yeah.
wanted. Because the campaigns for World War One and World War Two games are and were still some of the best shooting campaigns that you could play. Especially I remember vividly playing Medal of Honor. I think it's 1942 or something like that.
1942, yeah.
That thing had a story like that. I was a fucking little shithead then, but I was riveted to the screen. Like that's what initially got me interested in the history of the world wars.
Well, that and Brothers in
Those three
Arms, really.
games together.
Both of them.
I never.
I mean,
don't think I played.
you reminded
And
me
then-
of the World War II campaign of Call of Duty. That's also just one of my all-time favorite campaigns they've ever released.
Yeah,
It
see,
was just exciting. It was good. The
and then
graphics were phenomenal.
Before
Yeah.
Infinite War, everybody was going at them. It was like, please, just like we get that you guys like the futuristic stuff, but we have Titanfall for that. We've got Titanfall for wall running and jumping and modern shooting and all that complicated shit. We want a simple game, please. And then they brought out Infinite War. And I remember I closed out of that trailer the moment they showed the wall running. I was just like, I don't want to do it. I don't- just screw this. I'm not going to play Call of Duty. And I haven't played a Call of Duty since.
Yeah, I understand.
Uh, and I also think about it now as well with the zombies, World War II zombies, scariest zombies I've ever played. When I was wondering why it was so much more scary than
Oh yeah.
normal, being this like little snot cop, and it turned out that the same team that worked on Dead Space made the zombies, and we said that like now this makes so much more sense. Why it just felt so much. It felt terrifying to play that. All I remember is playing with my friend, him getting scared off of his ass to play zombies. They had jump scares in there, which was never a thing. No, okay, I understand. Okay, maybe you just like get scared playing zombies in general as a kid, but this had like full on Dead Space jump scares from what I remember, and it's yeah, it was a
Hey
bit
man,
hectic, but a lot of fun.
gamers these days will never understand Nachturo Toto or Farouk, okay? We was there.
Yeah.
We was there for them. No, it's genuinely
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
but because I mean, even as like a big Call of Duty guy, the last Call of Duty that I went out of my way to buy on like a release day or a week after or 2 weeks after was Cold War. That was the last one I went out of my way to buy, and that was just because they said all the DLCs are gonna be free, and I kind of like
Eh,
bet that I was like, you know what? It's all gonna be free. It's zombies. I like zombies, and I don't really like buying the extra maps from zombies. I might as well. Got it on release, enjoyed it, money well spent. Multiplayer was a bit rough. I remember it being extremely unbalanced. I still enjoyed it because realistically unbalanced or not, it didn't bother me. But I remember the zombies just being a lot of fun, knowing that we were gonna keep getting content constantly, kept me going back to the game. Even now, recently, I've been debating on installing it again just to go and play Cold War because I enjoyed that zombies. The mechanics were at an all-time high, especially for zombies, because for the first time you were able to explore and pretty much jump over any and everything in a sense, you know? You could
yeah.
anywhere you could get up onto that would allow you, you essentially could. I know Black Ops 3 had quite a little bit of that, but it felt like it had a lot more freedom than usual, being able to jump over railings instead of having to run around them.
Mm,
I think the only downfall with that game is they didn't really put as much effort into the maps as they could have. Don't get me wrong, some of those maps were really really good. I remember enjoying D Machine. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was Toten or something. I can't remember which one that was called, but the Toten map, one of those the Toten maps, right? Great map. That was probably one of my favorites. I played it a lot, and it really just upped the mechanics and the level of zombies. It just felt a little bit sad that you know it's now falling off completely. I mean, I didn't buy the game. What came after that? I can't even remember. They went back to like
Vanguard.
yeah, there we go,
Vanguard.
Vanguard. Oh my, the stuff I saw on that made me decide I will never buy this is being able to use a shotgun as a sniper. That
Yeah,
was mental.
that was really
Cross map shotgunning, one shotting someone, and then because of that, everyone is running around the map with nothing but that shotgun. I thought to myself, you know what, I can handle multiplayer and all, and stuff like this does happen from time to time, but I'd rather keep my sanity this time around.
yeah. No,
Mm.
it's true. They have strayed a far away now from what the original uh, motto was and original like plan was and everything. And similarly, like we've gotten to a point now where even the creative team seems to not be on the same page when it comes to the expansions, or just meddling. You know, it could just be meddling, as Sock mentioned with Activision. It could have just been meddling with with the expansion becoming a sequel, a misaligned one, really. And it's again sitting in a bad position now. The only problem now being there's no good Battlefield game at this point to save us. But I digress. So
You say that, but I'm not that I'm not that surprised by it because Battlefield goes like it goes good, 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 really shit, and then they go quiet for like
long.
half a decade, a full decade, and then they come back with some good
Oh,
Well, that's what
stuff.
I'm
let me
hoping,
just throw.
man. I'm waiting
Okay,
because
let
it
me let
was.
me just throw my like 2 cents in here. What is up with these companies and their horrible naming schemes? I can never tell which battlefield comes next. It's like what? Oh,
What do
it's
you
such
mean?
a
What
pain
do
in
you
the rear.
mean?
It's so
Don't you
easy,
understand?
man.
It's Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, Battlefield, Battlefield 2048.
Yeah.
Yes, like,
No, you forgot.
oh
You
my.
forgot about
No,
Battlefield, Battlefield 2,
let's not
Battlefield
even.
Bad Company, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, Battlefield Bad Company 2, Battlefield
Yeah,
3,
let's
Battlefield
let's not
1942.
start with Call of Duty either. This new thing of like Modern Warfare Remastered, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 2.
You
I
can't.
can't. Like,
You
I can't, dude.
This,
It's such a
the
headache to try
issue
and
is,
puzzle it
right?
out.
The issue is almost always the names aren't decided by the developers. The names are decided by a committee of executives sitting around a tabletop with a spreadsheet of like, oh, which games made a lot of money? Oh, I
buzzwords.
know Modern Warfare made a lot of money, so let's make Modern Warfare again. And that's basically more or less how it goes.
Like,
I've
yeah,
been
like,
on
and
the
don't get me wrong, I would rather much have them just do a remaster of the game than just use like the name, because now it's not the same game. We all know it's
No,
not.
it's not.
Yeah, same storyline or in the same era, but it's not the same game. We want similar. I would say okay, maybe like a slightly fresh update to the mechanics, but nothing too massive where it's now a remake and not a remaster.
That's
If you
not
know what
my
I mean?
Makarov. I don't claim that Makarov.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but there is one general consensus for the most part. There are outliers, obviously. For the most part, and Sock did mention a while back, the general consensus is expansions have improved games. They have made games better because of the allowing us to tell stories differently and allowing us to use this new form of content to push the games forward or enhance the games or elevate them and stuff like that. And as he mentioned correctly, he did talk about basically everything I wanted to cover with Witcher 3, but he gave it a very, very good rep. So, I mean, Blood and Wine and Hearts of Stone he mentioned. Masterful stuff. Really masterful stuff. A recent one, Ragnarok, God of War Ragnarok's Valhalla. A really masterful free expansion that added even more to the engrossing Kratos story from even all
Okay,
the way
hold on.
back
Let me
to
just like
Greece.
mute my mic while you talk about PlayStation stuff. Let me just go get some water and stuff.
Well, he's going to mute his mic because I'm about to go on the biggest rant yet. Because I left the best for last, and we have a little bit of time, so I can talk about just the rising of the phoenix from the ashes, which is Phantom Liberty and all the wonderful stuff that happened to Cyberpunk 2077. Because I mean, we all know the story about 2077. Abysmal launch. I'm not even going to attempt to defend that. Abysmal launch. Everyone should
Oh,
have been held accountable.
yeah,
Everything
yeah. Let
should
me
have
just
burned
say
down by that
the
point. Everything should have burnt down, but
the
despite that,
the most hilarious thing I saw from the launch, I remember just like scrolling
yeah.
like and the game finally came out or whatever. And not even like minutes later, I saw people posting like trying to launch the game on their first edition PlayStation 4.
And it
And
just.
I have never laughed so it was like it's 12 FPS for the
Mm,
cutscene loading in. That's
mm.
already bad. And then there's like a scene where he's in the train, right, for the opening scene,
Oh,
and then
yeah,
it
yeah.
opens up to like to show the cityscape. And the moment it shows the cityscape, it's just like unrendered blocks. The game crashes, and that's it. They
I
can't even
remember
get
that
past
meme.
that
I
section.
remember that meme. That was a really funny meme that they
That yeah,
mentioned.
The thing,
that was great.
something that I as an fuck, I'm so old this stream. I don't know why. I'm not even that old. I'm 31, people. I was born in 92. I'm not that old yet, okay? I just remember a lot of gaming stuff, but I've got this golden rule when it comes to CD Projekt Red. Don't buy any of their games until
On
they release their
launch.
first expansion.
I learned that the hard way. I learned
Because
that
I was there for Witcher 2. Like I've got the Witcher 2 collector's edition, right?
Mm,
It's fucking somewhere in England at the moment. And I remember when that game launched, it like none of our computers could run it.
mm,
But if you install it now, it works fine. And it's the same with Witcher 3 as well.
mm.
That thing, right? Like that thing killed computers. I never saw consoles because I don't pay too much attention to consoles when it comes to that.
It
But
destroyed.
I remember I had a few friends that bought that thing before launch, installed it, and then tried to play it. And they came to me the next is like, no, their CPU burnt out or their RAM
Too
broke or
grief.
something. Like the computer broke, the game broke something, and when the people that did get it to launch told, like, there was lists and lists and lists and lists of crashes and weird bugs and Geralt doing weird things and Siri doing weird things, random NPCs failing, entire cities not loading. Like I saw one guy busy fighting in the tutorial, and as he swung his sword, he fell through the map.
Nice. It's Geralt's teleport,
so-
man. He hates portals, remember?
So I genuinely think CD Projekt Red relies entirely on expansions to fix their games because because Cyberpunk 2077, a lot of the streamers that I watch, like the really big streamers, they said like they played 2077 and they liked it, but because of all the glitches, because of all the things that needed to be fixed, and because of all the weird stuff that happens and the performance issues. I mean, these are people with like 4090 systems. Like you can't get better computers than they have, and it struggled to run on their systems. And then they installed Phantom Liberty, and suddenly they all start giving it like 10 out of 10s. And that's the same that I saw with Witcher 3. Though in Witcher 3 it was a bit earlier. It was when they came out and said, okay, you don't have to pay for DLC. DLC is free forever.
Yes.
And then that fixed all the issues, and the ratings went from almost people asking for refunds to like overwhelmingly positive.
Well, from my side, I mean,
you were about to wax romantic about Phantom Liberty. So
I
please
know.
continue.
I'm so going to wax romantic about it because you know how I feel about that game. But as I said, I am the horse's mouth now when it comes to I was there. I bought Cyberpunk 2077 on launch on a PS4. I was there. A first edition PS4. I was there. I know exactly how that thing ran and how I kid you not, you know the grain filter, like if you take an image and turn the grain filter to 100 and it just becomes like, it looks like someone, it basically looks like something got painted on a wall because you can literally see the grain on it. That's how it looked on my screen when I was playing that game, this grain filter of it. It was terrible. I liked the game, but I literally made a decision, said, I'm not going to play the game. I know about it. I will wait until something's fixed and until I hear something. And I waited long. I mean, I waited a year or something, and that was by that time I got had a PS5 at that point because my PS4 was kaput. It was going out. It couldn't really handle the big games anymore, so I was like, I don't want to risk it. I'm gonna get a PS5, and I'm happy. And at some point, I decided, right, I'm booting up Cyberpunk 2077 again, and something incredible happened, as Soccer mentioned, with the DLCs and the expansions. At that point, obviously the revival of Cyberpunk 27 was on its way because they were releasing fixes like there was no tomorrow. Because you know, as you said, we know CD Projekt Red, they are dedicated to that sort of thing. And obviously, it does help if you have a media like Edge Runners running around promoting Cyberpunk and getting everyone to try and play the game because, oh my gosh, it's Edge Runners, oh, it's amazing! I'm gonna play the game and like be in the world of Edge Runners. But like 1.6, that was the update 1.6, that was the Edge Runners update with a ton of quality of life stuff and obviously implementing or putting in all sorts of Edge Runners content into it. That was a big one to get people back. And then once I started playing, patch 2.0, update 2.0 dropped. That was the big update. It was supposed to implement all the stuff that was missing at launch, such as the cop system that was broken. It fixed a lot of NPCs. It fixed a lot of quests. It did a lot of quality of life updates and just added a bunch more features into the game. And I played it again. I absolutely adored the main story. And I could play it on something that was running. The graphics were amazing and stuff like that. I had a fun time. I got really depressed at the end after all those endings. Like you cannot win in Cyberpunk. You really can't. No matter how hard you try, you freaking can't win. But I had my fun, and then Phantom Liberty came out, and that just blew it off the charts in terms of what that narrative did to me. It was genuinely so well put together that you had this entirely new story, like an entirely new part of town, entirely new story, entirely new stakes, entirely new sort of gameplay with espionage and themes and stuff like that, like a true James Bond type of thing. And despite everything in the end, you still can't win. I kid you not, people. You had a cure, an actual cure for your disease, and it's still not winning. That ending is still not winning. It was so.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. I
that's
was like,
just
how?
I
How?
always get really confused by this. Sorry, but like, you're not gonna hate this, but this is the first game in probably a series of 3. Of course, you're not gonna get cured.
No, you did. You do get cured. You get genuinely cured. But the catch was, well, spoilers for anyone who watched Phantom Liberty. But if you're 2 hours into this thing, you know by now it's fine. Phantom Liberty's thing is you do actually get cured by the what's their name? The
So-
FIA. The FIA. You do
Oh.
get cured by their science and stuff. But when you get cured, it's been 2 years. You went into a 2-year coma. So when you wake up, everything has moved on from you. And because of you've been cured, you cannot take cybernetic enhancements anymore at all. You cannot work as a merc anymore. No fixer would want you because your body cannot take cybernetic enhancements and stuff. So technically, depending on how you interpret the game and determining how you played your game, this might be a good ending for you because it means you can finally live a life and you can be normal in Night City or leave Night City or whatever because now you can't take cybernetic enhancements anymore, you're cured of your disease, and you can just live as a normal person. Or you can see it as you've been cured, you made a decision to be cured, but because of the time it took, you've lost everyone because everyone moves on at this stage. You have nobody left. Like, even if you go to the existing characters and stuff, like, they've all moved on or something. So, it's one of those endings. It was a very. Like I said, that ending does not favor me because of how I stood with the game and how I remained as an optimist because of the main game's endings. But it was something. But it was like you cannot really win. There's nothing. You cannot just win at the game. It always has to do this to you. But yeah, I have ranted and raved so much about Phantom Liberty, and like I said, I kind of make the joke, but I'm kind of serious about it. I am a little bit disappointed that, despite it having had to have broken rules and stuff, that it didn't get nominated at Game of the Year 2023. Just nominated, it didn't have to win. I know Baldur's Gate 3 deserved it, but I wanted a nomination,
Yeah,
man. Why did Resident Evil 4 get a nomination?
But
Why
between
did Resident Evil 4 get a
Hogwarts
nomination?
Legacy, Baldur's Gate 3, I mean, there's so many other games as well.
No, I mean, I get why it won't win, but it needs a nomination. If Resident Evil 4 remake,
not even for nominations. Like, I voted on all of those, and I didn't even see Phantom Liberty as a choice to get nominated.
I was just so sad, man. That game was genuinely my favorite game of 2023. No lie, that was my favorite game of 2023. Which kind of like that's just I want to use that as a point. The fact that I can say that about an expansion just tells you how far we've come in gaming. The fact that expansion used to be just, oh, we'll release a new map or some new levels or some new scenarios, as Xandu's scenario was, to the point where I consider Phantom Liberty to be such a transformative experience last year that I considered it my favorite thing I played in the entire year. And I think maybe for you, Sock, that would have been Blood and Wine, as you said, where you were so engrossed in the story of Blood and Wine. It was such a different experience for you